As you can. So just to remind you all that we are recording this session. So if you're not, if you don't want that, you need to leave now. But we will be recording this session, and it will be made available after the session. You'll see already that my colleagues are inviting you, everybody who's joined us, to just say in the chat who they are, where they're coming from. It's lovely to see somebody from Leeds. I'm in Leeds, Beth. But wherever you're from, you're very, very welcome. Please do sign in and let us know where you're from. And remember that you can use the chat throughout the session if you want to make comments on what you hear being said, or on any of the visual material that you see, or if you want to ask any questions, which we can put to our fantastic speakers for tonight, Emma Kerr and Sharon Witt, or indeed to any other members of the Early Years and Primary Committee of the Geographical Association who are also attending this session tonight. So lovely to see we've got people from all over the place. Hello, Kate from Southampton. My parents are from Southampton. I grew up near there. Oh, and Warsaw. Hertfordshire, fantastic. Okay, so I think I'll make a start. So for those of you who've only just arrived, welcome again. It's lovely to see so many people here. Please do use the chat to say who you are and where you are joining us from. This is the first GeogLive session for 2022, and we've chosen a seasonal theme, cold landscapes. We're looking at cold landscapes locally and as far away as the Antarctica. So we will be recording this session. It probably says that on your screen. Please can I ask you all to turn off your cameras now. Please do put them on later on when we get to question and answer sessions if you'd like to, but we encourage you to turn them off while the session is proceeding. Do use the chat for questions and comments. And if you'd like to move on to the next slide, Anthony, I'll just explain the schedule for tonight. So my name is Julia Tanner. I'm one of the members of the Early Years and Primary Committee of the Geographical Association, as are both of our fantastic speakers tonight. We've got Emma Kerr, a head teacher from Cornwall, who's also the great-granddaughter of one of the engineers involved in the original expedition to Antarctica. We've got John Cannell, who is a worker from the Geographical Association with particular responsibility for early years and primary matters. And we've got Sharon Witt, who you might well know through her work at Geographical Association conferences and through her articles in primary geography. Sharon is very, very creative and promotes a playful approach to geographical education. I'm sure she'll be sharing that with us later on. So this is the plan for the evening. Emma is going to start, then John speaking about the Geographical Association and the support that we offer to all primary teachers and primary subject leaders. Then Sharon will be joining us to speak about work in local area during the winter. There'll be a question and answer session where you can contribute through the chat, or you can ask questions through the chat, and those will be fed back to me by my colleagues. It's a chance to network. If you want to network with other people you see locally, do that, please do. And we will be finishing at 6 o'clock. So unless there's anything else before that, we'll just go on to Geography Live dates for your diary. So first of all, we've got Geography Live sessions 7, 8 and 9 coming up for the rest of the year. The first one on the 23rd of March, you'll see they're all Wednesdays. The first one, we're going to focus on everyday geographies. It's a link with the conference theme for this year, the annual association conference. And our key speaker is Alan Parkinson, who is president of the Geographical Association this year and who has chosen that theme for this year's annual conference. Charney Manor Primary Geography Research Weekend is going ahead, but there are no more places available to attend the conference itself. But you can, of course, follow us on Twitter, and you'll find over that weekend, it's the beginning of half term for many people, there'll be lots and lots of tweets coming out from Charney about the various sessions that are taking place there. And then, of course, finally, in April, it's the week before Easter, unusually, Monday the 11th to Wednesday the 13th of April, the Geographical Association is holding its first hybrid conference. So it will be face-to-face at Guildford University in Surrey, but some of the sessions will also be online. And if you go to the GA website, you can find out how you can access either the face-to-face version at Guildford, or you can join us online. Okay, I'm just going to hand over now to Steve. Steve Rawlinson is chair of the Primary Geography Editorial Board, and he's going to tell us about the new edition, which is literally, I understand, hot off the press. Yes, Steve.
Thank you, Julia. Yeah, I'm delighted to say that the latest issue is hot off the press. It's currently available online to members, and paper copies are being posted out even as we speak. I have to say it is a cracking issue. Pause while you take on board that little pun. But it is an absolutely cracking issue, and I'm indebted to Ben Ballin and the rest of the editorial panel for putting it together. There's masses in there that you'll find incredibly helpful, including a great deal about how to address the climate crisis with primary children, an intriguing article from Simon Catling on the danger of primary geography. That might raise quite a few eyebrows. And also a really superb article on how primary geography can play a role in challenging issues such as inequality, racism, prejudice and stereotypes. So I just can't push it forward to you enough. I think you'll find it a cracking issue. I'll crack it twice. Thanks very much, Julie.
That's great, Steve. Thank you. I can't wait to see my copy dropping through the letterbox, which I'm hoping it will do next week. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is hand over to Emma. Emma is going to be our first speaker tonight. Emma is head teacher of a school in Cornwall, and as I said, has a family link with the original Shackleton expedition. So Emma, can I hand over to you?
Thanks so much, Julia. Thank you. I'm just going to be starting my slides now. So while I'm chatting, if Julia, could you just let me know that my slides are being shown, if that's okay?
Yes, Emma, you're fine.
Thank you, Julia. So colleagues already on here are going to be looking through the comments section, because obviously I'm doing the slides on my computer. But if you've got any comments at all, if you want to share best practice, then please pop them in the comments section, because that becomes a really valuable resource in itself throughout today. And also if people want to re-watch it, then they can look and see what the comments are as well. It's an absolute privilege to be joined by people that are spending their Wednesday night at 5 o'clock talking about all things geography. So thank you so much for spending time with us. It's always really inspiring to see that people, especially this late and dark, are going to be talking about things geography, because it shows that you're amazingly reflective, enthusiastic practitioners who will be completely changing the lives of the young people that they are teaching with really rich, lovely subject matter. And this may or may not be something that you've already taught. It may or may not be something that you're necessarily interested with, but I do hope that you have a chance to have a little look at what I can share with you today, coupled with wider resource base that the rest of the GA team will provide you, as well as some of the pedagogical approach that Sharon will share with you later this evening. So essentially these are the main sort of focus areas that Julia would like us to look at today, and it comes back to that rich subject leader guidance. It comes back to obviously looking at that cold places part of the geography curriculum, distant places, and looking at how people, locations, environments are affected by that. So why Shackleton and why Antarctica? Well, the reason being that from many people's perspectives who I know who are already delivering this in a really inspiring and engaging way, provides a rich resource, and it's a story within a story within a story. And if you're not familiar with the story, I only have 10-15 minutes, so I can't do the whole story in that time. However, in brief, if I start at the end, many people will know that Shackleton successfully completed an expedition, but completed it in a way that he never anticipated to set out to. He originally, in 1914, for the Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition, sought to cross the continent of Antarctica. However, he failed, but what he succeeded in doing was delivering one of the biggest feats of all time, because he rescued all of his men and they all got home safely. And he did that by traversing mountain ranges that had never been explored. He did that by sailing across the seas for 2 weeks in a tiny little modified lifeboat, and he did that all whilst there were many men remaining behind who had hope in him as a leader that they would come back and rescue him, which they did. So I can't impress enough how many little snippets inside the story there are, and how many opportunities for rich learning and teaching experience you will be able to deliver. More examples of this include links to teaching children about wilderness, a remote locality, comparing the continent of Antarctica then and now. The concept as well that before, you know, Shackleton even managed to get his ship, the Endurance, down south, you know, the journey from Plymouth to Buenos Aires to South Georgia to the Weddell Sea was you know, challenging enough. And again, that is before the expedition officially even started. You've got a huge range of subject and knowledge within those different types of journeys, lots of geographical inquiry to get that sense of place between the different parts of the globe. You've also got the physical and human elements of that, so obviously the physicality of the different locations along the way, but also the human element of the time. So there's lots of crossover here with the whole of the humanities curriculum really, but also that awareness of roles, jobs. On the ship there was a cook, there is you know, your doctor, your meteorologist, your scientist, all the different people had different roles. So again, that comes into how human geography, to do with place, work, transport, everything has all changed over time. And it's very interesting comparisons today, where obviously everything's accessible, and most parts of the globe have some type of exploration, but this is compared to a time where there was nothing. They disappeared for their expedition, and they weren't, you know, they had very, very limited contact. There's obviously the softer skills, which is really important because of the SEMH, the sort of emotional development of children, but also the strength, courage, resilience and leadership that this whole project could demonstrate to you, as well as obviously weather patterns and all of the geography bits to do with topography of Antarctica, the misconceptions that it's a massive iceberg, that, you know, it is a land mass. And many environmental issues, from the Antarctic Treaty, polar ice caps melting. There's so many rich opportunities there, again, which you can link to your own interests. Obviously, like I've mentioned with history, it's the heroic age of exploration, but also that opportunity that so many people focus on Shackleton, but it's to give that perspective that there was also the Ross Sea Party, which many people don't know about. But without the Ross Sea Party, had Shackleton and his men been successful in reaching the South Pole, they needed food depots dropped the other side so they could make it all the way across. And quite often Shackleton is known, but the Ross Sea Party aren't. And again, that would be an interesting thing to explore. On the right here, you can see some work that children did with mapping the journey, using keys, map work, transferring their research into, actually, you can see at the top there's the little they moved the ships and the different boats along as well throughout different parts of their timeline. Very briefly, because we do like to have a plan, and we do like to know where it's going, because we have to have that often for our senior leaders, of which I am one. But it's important to realise that this can be built up over time. This isn't just a Key Stage 2 project. This is a project that any child of any age can access, and obviously it begins from understanding of the world in early years. And in many ways, the understanding of the world early years approach is very much what you see successfully throughout the whole school. But then obviously with key parts taken from the national curriculum. So I've tried to cite some work that Simon Catling and also the national curriculum here with how that could be progressed. Key knowledge entitlements as they are, but also shows how that knowledge is progressed over time. To show that what that looks like, you obviously have got children here. These are Key Stage 2 children, but obviously it's linked in with your literacy. So the meaningful links there are following some field work, outdoor learning, some potential DT work there, creating a makeshift James Caird, which was one of the lifeboats used in the crossing from Elephant Island over to South Georgia by Shackleton. You know, then they use those skills learned to then put that into their instructional writing. So they've actually had the experience of building something, and therefore you immediately see how they can then compartmentalize and put their thinking into a more coherent piece of instructional text. In the middle there, you've got some work where they looked at, we were doing some prime number work or something, and they turned it into a game, again, because we were looking at strategy and thinking about how number patterns go together. But again, they wanted to theme it to Shackleton. And again, it's not theming it for theme's sake, it's with a real core purpose. And again, on the flip side, on the right hand side, you've got a more in-depth piece of instructional writing on how to make hot chocolate in the wilderness. Again, not necessarily all Shackleton based, but again, you're looking at those skills of survival and however you want to interpret the topic. At the core of all of these things, and any really important theme, is that forethought of what text you're using. So for example, an absolute go-to text here is Shackleton's Journey, and I'm sure many of you have seen this. It's won lots of awards and whatnot, and the author Will is genuinely a brilliant guy. He is very engaged with schools. He takes some time to respond, but if you sort of contact him through Twitter or whatnot, he's normally pretty engaged with supporting or engaged, you know, contacting schools. There's so many opportunities linked to art and design. It is a graphic novel, but it's also very rich with some, you know, beautiful descriptions and ways of interpreting the Shackleton story. Even if you just bought one book for this whole term, you could do it on that. There's some other beautiful opportunities with links to Frank Hurley and the photography compared to Will Grill's artwork, for example, that you could explore in some art and media form. And then on the other extreme, you've got Mrs. Chippy's Last Expedition, which is again a book written, it's a biographical book about one of the men on the ship, Blackborough, who was the stowaway actually. But the book's written through the eyes of Mrs. Chippy. So again, you know, the fact that it's written in a way of not knowing what ice is and when they're getting their next feed and all these types of things, there's lots of parallels there. For example, with Warhorse. So if you were looking at Michael Morpurgo's text, you could draw those similarities there from prior learning. And it's really important that no matter what age of children you're teaching, there's some really lovely poetry out there, which although it's not about Shackleton, there's those similarities with ice, polar, cold, explorers, tragedy, you know, facing you know, sort of success in the face of adversity. And two really lovely things I've done in the past were the Rime of the Ancient Mariner and the Convergence of the Twain. And you know, the language and honesty that comes from that feeds into then future narrative writing and storytelling as well in many terms to come. You know, and just some of the language that particularly that quote I put it there, you know, children were using that in sort of 4 terms on in sort of year 6 after they'd done Shackleton in year 5, so it sticks. And when Sharon talks about her sort of approach to wintry landscapes, again, it's trying to elicit that poetry and that oracy during those sort of practical play experiential times as well. People, places and environments, like I said at the beginning, is a big part of this project, and with particularly like cold places and extreme wilderness, it's really interesting because you know, even though we're in 2022, we still have a lot to learn as people, and the places that we inhabit and the environments which are there, but also the environments we are affecting. So again, from here, you know, I've tried to sort of show that you've got Shackleton as a person, as a historical character, person, you know, father, explorer, geographer, historian, salesman. There's so much to learn about him as a person, as a leader. He genuinely inspires me, and I know that he inspired my great granddad, and then has in turn, you know, affected me as a person and made me who I am. And you know, equally, you can find some amazing stories and amazing diary biographical works on Frank Hurley, who's the chap in the middle. So he was the photographer on the expedition, Australian photographer, and then, you know, has had lots and lots of other experiences as well. So he's a very interesting chap to research. And then I sort of suppose I've tried to show that if you do focus on one of the men from the expedition, there's so many things you can draw down from that. And again, the creative arts side of things, you can look at the photography of Hurley, which is his picture there of the rescue of the men from Elephant Island, but also then turn that into, you know, your mixed media form, you know, to look at the sort of the impact that has and how the colours and the feel of that mood may have been. And the bottom at the middle, you've got the men when they were stuck in the ice, on the pack ice before the Endurance sank, playing football. And there's a whole piece of work to do there on how Shackleton entertained his men, for, you know, over the 3-year period that they were essentially stranded for. And that in itself, you know, for the children who, you know, in a week it feels like a long time, you know, for a 2-week period at school was the same journey time that Shackleton would have had in his you know, sort of modified lifeboat to go across from Elephant Island to South Georgia. And children feel this experience because we've done sort of celebration days where you come in dressed up as a member of the crew. We link to modern day expeditions, where explorers come in and actually talk to the children, and there's lots of networking there. So Twitter's an amazing resource to link up with current expeditions, and I'll share some examples of people you can link with at the end for that. And not to forget that there are scientists, and there's an active amount of work still going on in Antarctica to do with scientists, you know, on the different exploration centres. Again, a celebration day where they've made their James Caird, they're in role, they're looking at buoyancy, they're looking at advertisements from the time to do, you know, newspaper report writing, maths work to do with penguins and how much they weigh and how tall or short they are, mapping journeys, you know, linking it with sort of relief map diagrams to look at the topography of the area. There's so much rich opportunity to share in its black and white form. You know, there are obviously certain things in the curriculum that, you know, are there that may well link, may not link, but that's okay. Lots of it would come back to your literacy, your art, and also science, and obviously your humanities. But it's just important to see that, you know, you can link this across your curriculum with carefully chosen texts and a theme. And again, just a pit stop back, because this is all great. You've got all these ideas, you've got all this content, you've got a few good websites to go to because it's really overwhelming. But it's about the knowledge and how you're going to deliver it. And a lot of it all comes back down to the attention that you make and you allow children to have the time to make. And the fact that I chose this as well from some work that I've seen Sharon do before, is the fact that every human on the earth is an explorer, and I love that fact, especially with what we're talking about with this topic. So I know that Sharon will pick up on this a bit later. So what next? So we've got some ideas. You might think, oh, Emma's talking about something that sounds quite exciting, but it is overwhelming. You start to look at where to get your resources from, networking, and what other schools have done it, books, blah, 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 doing some medium-term planning. But it's all sort of here, and I would very much recommend. I've got loads of free stuff on my website. It's not anything I make money out of, but it's to get your ideas going. I've got my Facebook page if you want to join that, and I'm fairly active with that. Twitter, the Geographical Association, which obviously will be spoken about in a minute, has got lots of other examples of how you can look at polar environments and how that might link in more suitably to your contexts. I would thoroughly recommend you have a film and wine, but that's optional night, and watch Shackleton. That's available. There's also a brilliant DVD. I don't know if it's still available, but if you can get your hands on that or borrow it from somebody, if you know a sort of polar buff that might have it. But please don't pick up some of these big, thick Antarctica books, because they are heavy stuff to read, but that Shackleton Kenneth Branagh film is an absolute must, and it will give you lots of confidence to understand the story better yourself. They are also suitable for the classroom. Shackleton is, I think, a 12 or 15 certificate because there's a few swear words in it, but definitely for upper key stage 2 it would be suitable with some editing from the class teacher. And just almost finally, we've got the RGS link here. There's lots of positive links that they've already got in place. There's currently an expedition on its way down south now called Endurance 2022, where they are seeking to send sort of a robot and things down to find where the Endurance is, with a view to sort of do different studies on it, other scientific bits, and with a view of maybe even raising the Endurance at some point. So you can sort of join that journey through the Royal Geographical Society for schools in the UK. There's going to be teaching resources, and there's going to be lots of other wider bits and pieces to do with how you can bring that alive in your classroom. And I think they're due to be sort of getting near to the site where they'd start to do their explorations in sort of March time. There's another organisation called Reach the World in the US who are doing live streaming of different things, and they will link up with scientists that will work with your school and support you through that whole process as well, so you can sign up with them. And then there's also a scheme of work on there that I wrote a few years ago, exploring Shackleton's Antarctica, which a lot of that's similar content to what I had on the website anyway, but those are all really sort of useful things for colleagues to share with other colleagues that might be doing it, if you wanted to follow a real-time expedition compared to the olden time expedition. And just to sort of find, it's always nice to end on a quote, especially with the last couple of years in schools. But again, Shackleton was a wise man, kept a very solid, good diary. He was a prolific poetry reader and loved Browning. So there's so many things that you can learn from him, which, you can pass on to your children to develop their own confidence and resilience. And again, just some links there for you to sort of enjoy and follow current exploration, and by all means I'm more than happy to help anybody, and I hope you enjoy it if you end up doing it. And thank you ever so much for listening. I'm happy to answer questions at any point. Thank you.
Emma, that was just fantastic. Thank you. You've really shown us what an incredibly rich and fruitful theme this could be. Fantastic geography, but also so many fantastic cross-curricular links for really high quality, meaningful activities for the children. That was just lovely. Thank you so much. You've also told us about some fabulous resources, which I can see people already asking questions about. Just to recap, Emma, am I right in thinking that there's your own website where there's a lot of resources, and also the RGS has got a lot of resources, some of which you've contributed to? Yeah, okay. And of course we do have some Geographical Association resources about teaching about cold places, which is obviously useful, and John, who is going to speak in a minute, will be John Canal from the GA will be telling us about those. So those of you who are monitoring the chat, are there any questions for Emma rather?
Hi, Julia. Yeah, there's a few asking about where the resources are and whether we could have the links again. So if that could be either posted in the chat or in some way, that would be really helpful. But also a lot of thanks and a lot of excitement about what you've been doing and a lot of interest in how that can now be developed.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Kate, very much. So the links we will put in. Can we do that, Anthony, now, or can we tweet them afterwards? Yeah, he's nodding. It looks like we can do it. Oh, there you are. Right. So you should be seeing now coming up in your chat. There's the link to Emma's website, Shackleton in Schools website, and the RGS you'll all be able to find if you go to the Royal Geographical Society, look at their school resources, which of course are fantastic across a wide range of geographical learning, not just the Shackleton work. So you'll be able to find those there. And in a minute, John will be talking about what the GA has to offer. Is that your Facebook page that's just popped up in the chat, Emma? Shackleton in Schools? Yeah, it is. Okay. Did you say there was one other question, Kate?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting then.
Oh, it happens to the best of us.
It just wasn't doing anything. I'm just going to go back and have a look. I think resources and links, people saying that they're using Shackleton in English, and seeing how they're doing those cross-curricular links themselves, and just lots of people saying how good it is. So
yeah, I can see. I've not really been looking at the chat very much because I'm concentrating on chairing, but I can see there's lots and lots of thanks coming in, Emma. So thank you so much for that contribution. That's really sparked off a great deal of applause and appreciation from people who are attending this. And as you know, we have many, many more views after the event than we have people attending. So your message about how wonderful it is to teach about Shackleton will certainly be reaching hundreds of people in the next few weeks as more and more people look at the video, which will be on YouTube soon. Okay, I'm delighted to say that I can see Sharon has joined us. Before we move on to Sharon, we have John, who's going to just take us through some of the resources that the GA has to offer. So can I hand over to you, please, John?
Yeah, hello, everyone. So just a quick activity, just so you don't have to listen to my voice for very long. I just put a photograph up there, and just wonder if you want to put into the chat what you can see in the photograph, what it makes you think of, and what it makes you wonder. And while you're doing that, I will talk anyway. Basically, what we can offer as an organisation that is bespoke consultancy that's maybe organised in conjunction with your senior leadership team, with subject leaders, and it can be across your whole teaching staff, or it can be across subject leaders across a trust or network of schools that can focus in on a subject-specific learning area, such as cold environments. It can be around subject leadership. And the idea would be that, you know, we'd be able to develop in line with your needs, which I think is very important. We do, of course, CPD courses, which are slightly more generic because you're buying into whatever it's advertised as. So, for example, the In the Know series would be very much around subject knowledge acquisition, opposed to something like embedding fieldwork, which is more skills related. But pictures like this, I think, are invaluable. You know, this was actually on the 8th of January on my car bonnet. So I went outside, had to get something for my car at about 11 p.m, just before going to bed. And this is on my car bonnet outside, hence the fact that it's not the best picture because it was in the dark. But I'm sure it's something that Sharon will be talking to. The things that are around us constantly are really important for us to bring into the classroom. if Anthony just goes to the next slide, just click, so you've just got one map, hopefully. Yeah. So then we've got the more, maybe the more what Ofsted might describe it as sort of substantive knowledge. This is factual based. And I'll ask you maybe to put in the chat again, which countries are within the Arctic Circle there? And it might be that the activities we do as part of a bespoke CPD or bespoke consultancy or CPD might start you thinking about what countries and the positions of different countries around the world as part of learning more about a particular place and what it's like to be in a place. Because before you can learn about a place, you sort of need to be able to place it on a map. So I wonder if anybody can name any of the countries there in the Arctic Circle. Grand, well done, Joe's got a couple in there. Perhaps Anthony will click through to show us the rest that are in there. So of course, the US, Canada, Greenland, Russia are the big ones, but then the Scandinavian countries, Iceland, just outside the Arctic Circle, Iceland, not done much. We click on again, please, Anthony. So we've got a range of publications that support the teaching of geography at primary level. The Everyday Guide series, for example. And if we just click through once more, Anthony, there's 3 examples that would be very pertinent to what today's topic is. So Living in the Freezer was one of our Geography Plus, which has got lesson plans and ideas in it, investigating climate and biomes. Obviously, the sort of polar regions would be described as one of the world's biomes. And then In the Know. So I mentioned the In the Know webinar series that we run, but there's also the collection of information booklets that are designed specifically to help support the teaching of primary geography. And this particular one relates to latitude, longitude, night and day, which obviously when you get up to the Arctic and Antarctica, the length of the days change quite dramatically from what we're used to. So we've got a whole suite of resources that are available, and there's links there through to the shop for those 3, just to get you started. That's it from me, I think. I don't think there's another slide.
That's great, John. Thank you very much indeed. If I can just move on now to introduce our second speaker for the evening. We're thrilled to have Sharon Witt with us. Sharon has already started to screen share, and many of you will know her work. Sharon is fantastic on paying close attention to wherever you are. So Sharon, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you very much, Julia.
Sorry, was that a bit unexpected? I beg your pardon.
No, it's fine. I've shared my slides. Thank you. Really looking forward to talking to everybody today. So I thought I would start with this lovely quote from Horatio Clare from the winter journal, The Light in the Dark. And winter's often thought of as a quiet time when not a lot happens, when things sleep and animals hibernate, and when many of us stay indoors. And but this quote suggests that perhaps by looking outwards, by being in and observing nature, we can perhaps appreciate geographical patterns and contrasts and colours and textures and seasonal and environmental changes, which are key aspects of geographical fieldwork. Winter is a time for being attentive in our outlook and, to coin an Ordnance Survey phrase, to get outside. So in national curriculum terms, there's a lot in there about pupils developing a curiosity and a fascination about the world. And of course, at Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, there's an emphasis on observation as a geographical skill. So this session, as Julia hinted at, will be about focusing attention and noticing and offering some suggestions for thinking with geographical concepts and teaching ideas for responding to a wintry world. Of course, Julia herself has written a wonderful journal article about progression in geographical fieldwork experiences, and I would really urge you all to go and have a look at this if you haven't done so already. And I shall just be focusing on one small aspect of observation today. This is about thinking like a geographer, thinking with the concepts of space and place and time. So we'll be thinking through geographical inquiry and asking the inquiry question, what is this place like in winter? So what kind of features, human and physical, does this place have? Do these features change according to the season? What's unique about winter in your locality? What happens here in winter? What are the seasonal processes that are occurring? How does this place change in winter and why? What were past winters like, and how does winter in our place perhaps compare to other places in this country and around the world? So it's about more than just location and characteristics of a place, but it's about stories, local stories of people and place and animals and materials and things to understand, to develop a deep understanding of your neighbourhood in winter. Lots of archives in local papers. This photo is a famous winter of 1963 and is a local park at home in Kent, Dunhorland Park, when the lake was still frozen in March because the winter was so harsh, and is a bit legendary. So ask around, are there those stories in your place? So our local places are our everyday geographies, and it's about nurturing attentiveness in these wintry landscapes. So this is about real connection and active immersion, getting out and about with your children, as I said. This can happen in your school grounds or your local park or your local town, and it's about spending time pausing, lingering, dwelling, and returning to places to build up seasonal knowledge of place, changes of light, perhaps changes of state in respect to things like water, and change of growth. It's about experiencing wintry places, the materiality, the moods, and the atmospheres. And of course, getting children used to the senses and being receptive to those invitations of a lively world. And as teachers, we can model appreciative attention and notice in a respectful way. And of course, we always engage in those retrieval practices of what do children know already? What have they got to share? This is pulling on research from the science curriculum, because sometimes the research in primary geography is sparse. And my science colleague told me that children really struggle to recognise a tree that may be dormant in the winter, as the same tree that may have dressed with leaves in the summer. So this idea that you can help children to build their understanding of different seasons and what places are like during that time. So I would urge you to look out for wintry treasures with your children. Often winter provides a chance for trees to reveal their branches, to reveal birds in the branches. If I looked out of my oak tree now, I would be able to see a squirrel dray. And when I park my car in Fareham Town Centre, I can see some wonderful mistletoe, which of course is all obscured by the leaves in the summer. So keep an eye out for particular wintry treasures as you walk around your local place. And these can be recorded in Winter Wonderland books, or For the Love of Tiny Things books, where you can carry out inventories of these wintry treasures. You can engage in wintry wanders around your local place. our old inspector, Jeff Stanfield, always used to emphasize that you could get to know a lot about a place from just simply walking around it. But it might be that you take a wintry theme. So here we've got a photo collage of looking for blues. But here also we have an icy collage where the harshness of icy patterns is extremely visible. And of course, if you don't use a photo collage pack, you could get the children to be drawing and writing and collecting words and descriptive words and putting those together when you get back to school. So some possibilities for some cross-curricular links to literacy. I know that Emma will have shared some pedagogical thinking with you, some relational pedagogical thinking, and she will have talked about these elements which are about connecting children to your local environment, to your geography learning, which helps to motivate and engage the children. So these have been inspired by an author called Gillian Judson, and she suggests that to cultivate in education that inspires students to look at the world, you may think about role play and senses and working in miniature and thinking about extremes, so giant and miniature, so playing with scale, thinking about placemaking and imaginary worlds and moving through places as well. So I know that Emma will have shared some of those pedagogical ideas with you, and this is very much at the heart of wintry fieldwork too. So I'm just going to share now a few ideas with you, which I hope will guide you through and give you some food for thought that you might add to your curriculum fieldwork. So of course, attending to sensory particulars of wintry places is important. And of course, don't forget, geography is about taking a different view. So I hope that these photos are of raindrops, one on a tree, but one on a fence. And you can see how, if you look really carefully into the raindrop, you get a reflection of the branches, wintry branches of a tree. So you can see the world from a different view if you're looking really carefully. Collections of textures, really easy to do if your children have got access to iPads to take photographs, but of course they can be recorded as well. So here we have one that's natural and one that was taken on urban fieldwork in London. Often inspired in response to places by artists. And this is an artist called Ruth Broadbent, and she has a project called Walking a Line, and details of that can be found at this website. And for this you'll need some squared paper, some pencils and a pencil sharpener. And it's about a collective recording and mapping of the surface of the ground. It's about walking and drawing. It's about pausing and listening to the ground, noticing what's often under our feet but often overlooked, and of course then connecting to past, present and future. So at various points within your walk, you would get the children to stop and to take a rubbing, and on the back you would end up recording some information, labelling it, you know, what part of the journey is it, the date, the location, perhaps the weather. So lots of chance to record some geographical information. And many of you will have set about with your children, trying to match colours from a colour paint palette from a paint shop into the environment. But of course the weather isn't always great, can't always get out and about. So here we have an activity where it's a winter photograph, but the colours have been matched to the photograph rather than to the outdoor environment. And of course, if we can't get out and about, there are always opportunities to think about the weather indoors. So here we have a group of children who are thinking about what they know already about rain, and they are tracing the rain, watching the rain, meditating with the rain on the classroom window, and they really enjoyed doing that. If you'd like some further inspiration about conversations with rain, the Art Gallery of Western Australia has some wonderful resources, a rain journal, which encourages the children to think about sensing, noticing, breathing, wondering, and experimenting towards open-ended and imaginative outcomes, but all linked to weather and ways to perhaps open up conversations about the climate crisis. One of my favourite things to think about is that there's always something happening in a puddle. I think a puddle's a wonderful focus for some geographical fieldwork, and hopefully you can find one in most places, including the school grounds. But a puddle is never static. It reminds me a little bit of the geography curriculum. It can grow and it can shrink. It can be muddy and it can be clear. It can reveal the sky or shadows of objects on its edge. To children, it can be an underwater kingdom or full of sharks. It can be something to jump into or something to avoid. And at certain times of year, it freezes, and at other times it dries up. So lots and lots of things to think about with a puddle. So wintry shadows offer opportunities to play with patterns. And here also you can see how the shadows, when I was on a wintry walk, really highlighted the street furniture that was out and about. Also winter shadows with the sun low in the sky, just offer opportunities to play with long shadows, and hopefully, it would help your children to think about where the sun is, how the sun is impacting on the environment, and what features it highlights. And again, it's amazing what you do notice if you are just out and about for a walk. So here we have the reflections of the sun via the glass of a window on the side of a building. And again, without the sun, you rarely would see the lake like this. So lots of opportunities that winter offers for place to reveal itself. One of my favourite things to talk about, and I'm aware of the time, so I will just briefly mention, is the possibilities of animating a wintry world. This is really important to engaging in your children. Oh, sorry, that's my timer going off there. In acts of geographical playfulness. Now, this can come over as light-hearted and perhaps not rigorous geography, but actually it's really serious in its intent, because your children are noticing the detail. They are touching the local environment, they're feeling the features, they're purposefully placing their little people in certain places for an effect to see the impact. Here you might like to take a geography pal out and about around your local area with you. I know that younger children have really enjoyed talking about their journey to their geography pal in their pocket, stopping and using geographical vocabulary, describing routes out and about in places. For your older children, one of the things that I really like is been inspired by Stephen Scotham's street work, which you'll find in a book called Teaching Outdoors Creatively. It's an activity to develop language and build vocabulary to describe the built environment. So Stephen has make a list of geographical vocabulary to describe places. And we took our gnome out and about and took photos of our gnome in those places to try and help understanding of this vocabulary and to build it into the children's repertoire. If you'd like a copy of the sheet, if you take a photo of that QR code or on the replay, it should bring the sheet up. But if there's any problems, just let me know and I'll happily make that available to you. But it was working, so hopefully it does. So finally, this is about developing children's geographical knowledge, which is not about standing at a distance, but about paying attention and focusing on a direct material engagement with the world. So through this wintry geographical fieldwork, children can develop a deep knowledge about the detail of their local area, about diurnal change, seasonal change, cyclical patterns, climate change, which is perhaps more long-term. We know that the trees set bud before the winter. The coldness is needed to germinate the plants. So although it feels cold and dormant, things are happening, and our fieldwork can record this. So happy wintry inquiries. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic, Sharon. Thank you so much. It's as ever, you've offered this the most fantastic invitation to get out there and look at things, to pay really close attention. It's just brilliant. Thank you so much. I love your imagination, the way you bring play. As you know, I absolutely love it. And the major message I got from that was the importance of helping children develop really deep knowledge of their local environment. And of course, with knowledge comes respect. So all those opportunities for repeated explorations, repeated immersion, close attention, using all the senses, all of these things are so important, not only in terms of children's geographical knowledge and understanding of place and sense of place, but of course for cherishing this planet fragile little planet that we all live on. I can see there are lots and lots of appreciative comments coming in on the chat. Thank you very much. Can somebody who's been monitoring the chat tell me, are there any questions for Sharon? I know we've only got a couple of minutes now. Looks to me, Sharon, as if it's mostly people saying how fantastic, thank you very much.
That's exactly right, Julia. Everybody's just delighted with the session.
Yeah, and lots of praise for Emma as well, I see. So that is just great. Thank you. Okay, I'm conscious of the time. Anthony, thank you. So as I said at the beginning, this is a session brought to you by the GeogLive team, and the GeogLive team is one of the 4 work teams of the Early Years and Primary Phase Committee of the Geographical Association. I'd like to thank Emma and Sharon, who are both members of that committee, and John, who is a member of staff at the GA, for their fantastic inputs tonight. I'd also like to thank the rest of the GeogLive team who are working very hard in the background. That's Steve, Anthony, Kate and Sophie. Jen's not able to be with us tonight. As you know, we really value the work that the Geographical Association does on behalf of geography generally and primary geography in particular. We'd be thrilled if anybody would like to join. There is free membership of the GA, and there is also paid for membership, which gives you access to a huge range of resources, including probably the most useful thing of all, access to all editions of primary geography going back for the last nearly 20 years. I think it's until 2005. So you can see on the screen some of the reasons to join. There isn't time for questions. I'm sorry about that. But if there's anything anybody wants to put in the chat, please do put it in the chat, and we will try to tweet out the answer or put it up on the website, or we'll get it to you one way or another. The next session of GeogLive 7, will be on the 23rd of March. And as you can see, we've taken as our theme everyday geography, picking up on the conference theme, the Geographical Association conference theme for this year. I'm thrilled that we've been able to secure as our key speaker Alan Parkinson, who is president of the Geographical Association this year and who chose this theme for the conference for which he's responsible. So we'd be very pleased for any of you to join us on that day. We'll put it up on Eventbrite in the next few weeks, and you'll be able to see the link and get your ticket there. Thank you very much for all the people who are putting in the chat how much they've enjoyed this. It's really great to see so many of you finding these sessions useful. The reason we do it is to help teachers and schools to provide really fantastic geographical learning experiences for children in early years and primary years. And if we are helping you to do that, then we are thrilled about that. Okay, thank you again to all our contributors, and thank you to everybody who joined us. And we look forward to seeing you at future sessions or at GA conference. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.